I'm 32, and what I found 2 months ago turned my entire life upside down. It started with a renovation. My husband and I had finally saved enough to fix up the attic into a home office for him. We live in a house that used to belong to his late uncle, an old, creaky two-story place on the edge of a quiet town. The attic had always been off-limits, mostly used for storage and gathering dust, but now that we were planning to start a family, every bit of space counted. One Saturday, while my husband was out running errands, I figured I'd get a head start clearing some of the junk. I dragged boxes around, swatted away cobwebs, and cursed under my breath when I hit my head on a low beam. Then I noticed a panel in the ceiling, slightly misaligned. Out of pure curiosity, I grabbed a stepladder, pushed the panel open, and reached up. My fingers brushed against something. A plastic bag. Inside it, bundles of cash. Not just a couple hundred, this was thousands. Tens of thousands. I couldn't believe it. My heart was racing. I pulled the bag down and dumped it onto a blanket. There were dozens of neatly wrapped stacks, rubber bands still holding them tight. A faded receipt at the bottom was dated almost 15 years ago. I stared at the money, trying to make sense of it. It didn't feel real. I sat there for what must have been a full hour, turning over every what-if in my mind. Why would his uncle have hidden something like this? Why didn't my husband mention it? And more importantly, what the hell was I supposed to do now? I didn't touch the money again for the rest of the day. When my husband came home, I acted like nothing had happened. My mind was spinning with possibilities, and I needed time to think. He made dinner, chatted about work, and mentioned how he might ask for a promotion soon. Meanwhile, all I could do was nod and pretend I wasn't sitting on a massive secret, one that might destroy us. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying everything I knew about his uncle in my head. He was a quiet man, never married, lived alone until he passed from a stroke. My husband inherited the house because they were close, but he never talked much about him. Just that they used to watch sports together and that he'd help out sometimes around the yard. But now? I wondered if there was something else, something darker. The next day, when my husband left for work, I went back up into the attic. I took photos of the money and checked the bag more carefully. There were still no markings or clues, just that old receipt from a hardware store. I recognized the name. It was a small shop that had closed down years ago. That night, I asked my husband casually if he remembered anything odd about his uncle. Any rumors? He just shrugged, said his uncle was a little paranoid and never trusted banks. That actually made sense. But it didn't explain why the money was still there after all these years. If it was his, why didn't he ever spend it? Why hide it so well? And then, a week later, I came home from work and found my husband in the attic. He claimed he was just measuring, but I saw it in his eyes. He'd been looking for something. The look he gave me wasn't guilt. It was panic. Like he'd just realized I knew. That was the first time I started to feel afraid. After I caught him in the attic, the air between us shifted. He smiled too much, laughed too easily. Every word felt like it was trying too hard to be casual. And suddenly, he became very interested in locking the attic door. Claimed it was for safety, didn't want me tripping or falling while he was working on it. But I knew what he was doing. He was trying to keep me out. I didn't say anything. I played along. But at night, I started keeping a notebook, recording everything. His strange new routines, the days he left early and came home late, the times he disappeared for hours without explanation. At one point, I even checked the ceiling panel again. The money was gone. That hit me like a punch to the chest. I stood there staring at the empty space for what felt like forever. He must have found it after all. Or worse, maybe he knew about it all along. I didn't know whether to confront him or just run. But things got weirder before I could decide. One Thursday morning, he left for work like usual. Kissed me on the cheek, told me he'd pick up dinner. But by nightfall, he hadn't come home. I waited. Called. Texted. Nothing. At first, I figured maybe he'd gone to a bar or crashed with a friend. But the hours ticked by, and deep down, I knew something was wrong. Or very, very intentional. I didn't sleep at all that night. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the bag of cash had just bought my husband a new life without me. By the next morning, I still hadn't heard from him. No calls, no messages. His phone went straight to voicemail. I tried calling his office, he hadn't shown up there either. Nobody knew where he was. The police said I had to wait 48 hours to file a missing persons report, even though I told them something felt off. It wasn't just that he'd vanished. It was the way he did it, no warning, no trail. Almost like he'd planned it. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get more surreal, someone knocked on my door. It was a man I didn't recognize. Late 40s, heavy-set, with a rough face that looked like it had seen more fights than birthdays. He wore a worn leather jacket and held an envelope. He didn't introduce himself, just looked me dead in the eye and said, "Tell him time's up." I froze. My heart was pounding so loud I couldn't hear my own breath. I managed to ask, "Time's up for what?" He didn't answer. Just handed me the envelope, turned around, and walked off like it was nothing. No car waiting. No goodbye. Just disappeared down the street. Inside the envelope? A single photo, my husband, standing in front of a motel, handing a briefcase to someone whose face was turned away. And on the back, in bold black ink, just 2 words, "You're next." I didn't leave the house that day. I couldn't. I locked every door, checked every window, even stacked furniture against the back entrance like I was preparing for a siege. I must have read the note 100 times. "You're next." Next for what? I wanted to believe it was some kind of mistake. That maybe my husband got caught up in something over his head, gambling, maybe. Debt. But the more I thought about that photo, the more I realized something else. The man he was handing the briefcase to? I'd seen that jacket before. Folded neatly in the back of our coat closet. My husband had been meeting people in secret. I opened his laptop, tried passwords for half an hour before I guessed it, our old cat's name. Inside his browser history, buried beneath dozens of work tabs and YouTube videos, was a folder marked paint samples. It wasn't about paint. There were documents. Names. Amounts. Locations. I didn't understand half of it. But it looked like a ledger, like he'd been tracking payments. And not small ones. One entry caught my eye, $50,000, drop confirmed DC. Was he laundering money? Running jobs? None of it made sense. But then I saw it, my name. Next to it, $0. No payment. No note. Just my name. That's when it really hit me. He hadn't just disappeared. He'd left me behind for a reason. And now, whoever he owed, they thought I was part of the deal. That night, I didn't sleep. Every sound outside felt like it was creeping closer. Every creak in the floorboards felt like a warning. I moved the envelope, the photo, and the ledger file copies to a fireproof box and shoved it under the bed. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew I had to prepare for anything. The next morning, I called my friend Elise. I didn't tell her everything, just that my husband had gone missing and I was scared. She offered to come over, but I told her no. I didn't want anyone else getting pulled into this. I needed answers first. So I went back into the attic. Not because I thought the money was still there, I knew it wasn't, but because something was bugging me. That panel in the ceiling. When I'd found the cash, it wasn't taped, locked, or even covered. Almost like it was meant to be found. I climbed the ladder, opened the panel again. This time, I checked the edges, the beams. And that's when I felt it, a small, cold metal object, tucked between the insulation. A burner phone. Old. Dusty. Dead battery. I brought it downstairs, charged it, and waited. When it finally powered on, there were only a few texts saved. All from one number. All short. Coded. Like. Same time. Same place. No deviations. Black SUV. Only you. Confirm drop, red duffel. One message stood out. Loose end not handled. Wife still in play? My blood turned to ice. He'd told them about me. Maybe even used me. And now that he was gone, I was the last piece left on the board. I didn't want to go. Every instinct screamed at me to stay hidden, to vanish. But I couldn't live like this, trapped, hunted, waiting for a stranger to knock on my door again. I needed to know what he'd been involved in. And I needed to find out who was behind that message. So I did the stupidest thing I've ever done. I followed the trail. One of the messages on the burner phone had a location tag, a GPS pin just outside town. I mapped it. A rundown roadside motel on the edge of a highway exit. I knew the place, faded neon sign, cracked parking lot, the kind of place people went to disappear. I waited until just before dusk and drove out there. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the way in, hoodie up, sunglasses on, praying I wouldn't be recognized by anyone. At the front desk, I told them I was meeting someone in room 12. The clerk just nodded and handed me a spare key, like this kind of thing happened all the time. Room 12 was at the far end, tucked behind a dumpster and a broken vending machine. I stood outside that door for what felt like an eternity. Then I unlocked it. The room was empty. Bed unmade. Ashtray full. Curtains drawn tight. But someone had been there recently, there was still heat coming off the TV. I started to back out. And that's when I saw it. On the bathroom mirror. Written in red lipstick. Too late. I didn't even hear the door close behind me. I spun around, heart racing, half expecting someone to be standing there. But the room was empty. The door hadn't latched, it had drifted shut from the wind. At least, that's what I told myself to stop from breaking down completely. I didn't stay to find out if I was wrong. I bolted out the door, ran all the way back to my car, and sat there gripping the steering wheel, forcing myself to breathe. Every instinct told me to leave town, to vanish the way my husband had. But then my phone buzzed. Not the burner, my regular phone. Unknown number. No caller ID. Just a text. We warned him. You shouldn't have come. That was it. No threats. No demands. Just cold confirmation. Someone was watching me. They knew where I was. And worse, they didn't sound like they were in a hurry. This wasn't about a quick hit. They were waiting for something. I raced home, locked everything again, and backed up every file, photo, message I had to an encrypted drive. My hands were shaking the whole time. I felt like a ghost, floating, watching someone else's life implode. And then, silence. For 2 days. No texts, no knocks, no strange cars outside. Just calm. Until I opened my front door on the 3rd morning and found a package. No return address. Just one thing inside. A key. And a note. You want answers? Storage Unit 43. East Side Depot. Come alone. I stared at that key for over an hour. Every scenario ran through my head, traps, setups, warnings I'd read in crime thrillers suddenly felt too real. But curiosity has a way of swallowing fear. I drove to East Side Depot just after sunset. It's one of those massive self-storage places with long rows of identical doors. The kind of place you could scream and no one would hear you. Unit 43 was at the far end. I parked 2 aisles over, walked slowly, pretending like I knew exactly what I was doing. I carried a flashlight, gloves, and the burner phone, just in case. When I reached the door, I hesitated. This was the last choice. After this, there'd be no pretending things could go back to normal. I slid the key into the lock. The metal groaned as I rolled up the door. It was empty. At first. But then I saw it. A single item sat in the middle of the unit, a large black trunk. Old, military style. Padlocked. Next to it, taped to the wall, was an envelope. I opened it. Inside, another photo. This time of me. Taken 2 nights ago. I was standing in my kitchen, washing dishes. Smiling. Oblivious. On the back, written in the same handwriting as before. Now you understand. My blood ran cold. Whoever this was, they'd been in my house. Close enough to see me. Close enough to kill me. And they didn't. Not yet. I didn't touch the trunk at first. I just stood there, staring at it, that photo still burning in my hand. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But more than anything, I needed to know what was inside. So I broke the lock. I used a tire iron from my trunk and swung until it snapped open. The lid creaked, and inside were boxes. Not cash. Not drugs. Boxes full of files. Documents. IDs. Photos. Some of them were old. Some were of people I didn't know. Others were of my husband. And they weren't all the same man. I mean, they were, but in each photo, he had a different name. Different hairstyle. Different city. Different life. One was dated 6 years before we met. Another one, just 2 months ago, time-stamped in Miami. He had more than one identity. One file stood out. Thick. Well-used. Labeled in red marker, last job, Seattle. Inside were photos from our house. My car. My office. My face circled in red. That's when I realized, I was the job. I dropped the folder. My hands were shaking. And at the bottom of the trunk, a phone. It rang. Once. Twice. I answered. A voice, distorted, mechanical, said only this. You were never the wife. You were the cover. Your husband was never running. He was handed over. Then silence. No click. No goodbye. Just silence. And in that moment, I knew. My whole marriage had been a lie. I wasn't collateral damage. I was part of the plan. And now? I'm the only one left.